What's up, YouTube? It's time for a review of the new John Mayer record, The Search for Everything, out this past Friday, April 14th. John Mayer, man, what can I say? Longtime fan of this guy, probably in my top 10 most listened to artists ever. So I'm definitely someone you can count on when it comes to an informed opinion on his music. To me, the guy's a fucking unicorn. Seriously, what other 21st century artist can you think of that have achieved John Mayer's superstar level of commercial success while having actual musical chops and sneaking in all sorts of interesting musicianship into the context of massive pop tunes, and on top of that, continuing to showcase an adventurousness and a genre elasticity by pushing their sound into all sorts of different directions? I mean, you could say hip-hop has Kanye, you could say rock and alternative music has Radiohead. This special combination of universal appeal with actual talent on top of ambitious stylistic experimentation. I mean, it's rare across all genres of music, let alone when we're talking about modern pop music. Now, past generations have had people like the Beatles and Bowie and MJ, people that were liked by the masses and also underwent interesting stylistic evolutions. But when I think about the pop landscape in 2017, people like John Mayer are fucking rare. So The Search for Everything is Mayer's long-awaited follow-up to 2013's Paradise Valley, which was his kind of full-blown foray into country and folk music. It's a record that I fucking loved, and to this day, every time I listen to it, just transports me to a whole different universe. As a stylistic experiment, it was a resounding success. The Search for Everything, though, for all intents and purposes, really is John Mayer's return to pop music, which, if you think about it in his discography, he hasn't really played, categorically speaking, since his sophomore record, Heavier Things, which came out in 2003. Of course, all of his records have had some sort of pop flair to them, but this new one really is pop music through and through, which was showcased by the two waves of this album that he released ahead of time in January and then in February, which major props to him for an exciting, unconventional release strategy in an era where putting out music has just become this total free-for-all. And quick plug, if you want to read my blog review of Wave 1, which came out back in January, you can look in the description. Anyway, in terms of this album being reminiscent of Mayer's early work, the number one thing that I immediately liked about it was that it's really a return to the intimate rom-com relatability that made his first two records so special to so many people. I mean, when you think back to songs like City Love and My Stupid Mouth and Split Screen Sadness and Come Back to Bed, these songs really were like intimate narrations of our own everyday romantic lives. I know that's why I connected with Mayer so much. These songs were like side-by-side soundtracks to my first loves, first heartbreaks, first identity crises. They were right there with me through all of it. And that's what any great pop music should do. That's why it's pop music. That's why it has the reach that it does, because it speaks to everybody. And this is something that John goes back to doing exceptionally well on The Search for Everything. These lyrics are just full of every single emotion anyone who's ever been in a relationship has ever felt. And particularly potent on this album is how he captures the essence of a breakup and its various stages. On a song like Moving On and Getting Over, he's dealing with the aftermath of a breakup, but more specifically, he's dealing with that point where you think you're finally over somebody, but you're still, as Mayer puts it himself, one text from being back again. And the lyrics here beautifully and elegantly bring these emotions to life with lines like, "Tell me I can have the fact that you loved me to hold on to. Tell me I can keep the door cracked open to let light through." It's just that stage where you think you're ready, but you're still looking back and wondering if there's still a way to rekindle, there's still a way to salvage whatever heartbreak happened in the first place. Meanwhile, the super catchy opener, Still Feel Like Your Man, that song takes place maybe a month later in the breakup process, because now he's at the point where he's trying to be social, other girls are showing interest, but he's so used to being with his ex that it's making him feel ambivalent, maybe a little trepidatious. It's making him feel like she still has some sort of ownership over him, which she does in a way, because he's still being governed by the emotions that he feels for her. There's also the depressed, downtrodden closing time charm of Roll It On Home, which probably takes place a little bit past Still Feel Like Your Man in the breakup timeline, And in this song, Mayer just effortlessly brings to life the tipsy, late-night, regret-filled ex-lover scenario. I particularly loved the second verse of the song where he says, the last 10 texts were with your ex and all of them were sent by you, but you keep staring at your phone like something's coming through. And he basically encourages the person in question to just pack it in for tonight. Tomorrow's another day, but for now, you've taken an L. Just get over yourself. Go home. Go home, you're drunk. Unfortunately, though, sometimes Mayer is coupling these universally relatable lyrics with just completely by-the-numbers, dime-a-dozen songwriting and arrangements. Mayer is definitely restrained on this album, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but he does turn in a few just completely lowest common denominator pop tunes that a guy like him is so above and just is capable of so much more. Two songs in the middle of the track list that really bum me out and really crush the album's momentum for me are In the Blood and Changing, both of which I do enjoy lyrically. I especially enjoy the feeling that he expresses on In the Blood, this anxiety of trying to shake your parents' patterns and almost trying to shake genetics in a way. We're all just sitting here trying to improve on our parents' lives and trying to avoid the mistakes that we watch them make. He captures that very nicely. So I identified with that, but musically, this song's got these super forced, like, stadium claps and this acoustic guitar progression that any asshole in the middle of a college campus quad who's trying to get pussy could be playing. So just to me, it feels very unimaginative. It's very disappointing to hear from an artist of Mayer's caliber. Same thing with the song Changing, which vocally, to me, feels almost like a nursery rhyme. I swear to God, it sounds like something that I would have been taught in like first grade music class. And every time I hear this refrain, all I can picture is a bunch of 6-year-olds swaying back and forth and sitting crisscross applesauce and just repeating the refrain back to the teacher who's sitting on a piano like, I'm not done. You know, that's the image that this song evokes for me. I don't know. It's the simplicity rubbed me the wrong way, I guess. To a lesser extent, so did the song Never on the Day You Leave, which, you know, says the hook in the first line of the song. Then there's that spot around the 1 minute mark where the drums kick in. That sounds like the ending to every single How I Met Your Mother episode ever. Like this, he's going to get hella sync deals off this thing. Every rom-com in the business is going to be gunning for this song. Which I know I used the phrase rom-com relatability earlier, but I didn't literally mean that John Mayer's music sounded like the bland adult alternative that plays during these movies and these television shows. But this simple, delicate touch isn't always a bad thing. One of my favorite songs on the album is Emoji of a Wave, which is very bare. It's just Mayer and an acoustic guitar and some strings, but the chorus melody is a real strong one and just really touched me. As did the closer, You're Gonna Live Forever in Me, which is so tender and so heartfelt, with Mayer reaching into this ethereal falsetto and also incorporating some classy, folky whistling. And like I said in my last video, it includes what might be my favorite John Mayer lyric to date, which is saying a lot, the line where he says, life is full of sweet mistakes and love's an honest one to make. That's a line that I have thought about every single day since I first heard this song back in January. So yeah, this album isn't ever trying to wow you. It's very easy listening. A song like this Single Love on the Weekend is just very pleasant, very gentle on the ears, maybe a little bit sensual, and that's nothing to complain about. But it is clear to me that the two best songs on the album for me are the ones where there's a little something else going on. The first of those is the song Helpless, which brings more of a crunchy rock vibe and just an overall liveliness that I wish more of the cuts on this album had. The song's chorus has at least 3 guitars that are layered very cleverly where they kind of finish each other's sentences. And there's also a wonderful guitar solo that, very surprisingly, cuts through beautifully considering how busy the musical bed is underneath it. And then the other favorite tune of mine that sort of deviates from the rest of this album is Roll On Home, which I mentioned earlier. This one actually has a bit of like a Paradise Valley vibe with some slide guitar, some dirt road country rhythms, and it's out of place on this album, but in the best way possible, to be honest. So to wrap it up here, The Search for Everything is probably John Mayer's safest, least challenging record to date. It's very fluffy, it's very lightweight, there's not really much of anything adventurous going on stylistically, and it's the type of record that the most casual music listener on planet Earth could put on and immediately connect with. So take that as you will. Personally, I prefer to be challenged as a listener, and that's something that Mayer's been able to do very subtly throughout his catalog, even in the more lighthearted moments, but it's something that felt a little absent from this album. You know, some of these songs I could have heard on any up-and-coming singer-songwriter record. I could hear some of these songs on any given day if I just stepped into Cafe 939 by Berklee School of Music. And to take it a step further, some of the more vanilla moments on this album, like Changing in the Blood, left a pretty sour taste in my mouth. But the good moments on this album are great additions to Mayer's catalog, and overall I enjoy the record. If you'd prefer to have my perspective on this record in the overall context of John Mayer's discography, right now, I'd probably rank The Search for Everything as my 5th favorite John Mayer record out of 7, with Battle Studies and Born and Raised bringing in the rear, and my 4 favorites still standing tall. Room for Squares, Heavier Things, Continuum, Paradise Valley, still my favorite John Mayer records. But like I said, overall, I enjoyed this record despite its flaws. The Search for Everything gets a 6 out of 10 from me. As always, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, or shoot me a message so we can continue to talk music, and I'll see you guys soon.